cars underway. Stamps his authority once again.
My word, this could go wrong.
On the brakes, goodness me, what a launch.
Look at that.
It just all comes down to this. Here we go then, ladies and gentlemen. One last dance around the Abu Dhabi circuit for round number 14 of APC season number 9. We've had twists, we've had turns, we've had our champion crowned, and now we head to the final round of the season with a lot still to play for. My name is Joseph Black, and alongside me will be Owen Boldero as always, and we'll be taking you through the action around the Yas Marina Street circuit ahead of us this evening and ahead of the drivers as well. But before we get into it, just a little debrief about how the season has gone. We're going to jump straight to the championship graphic, and of course, our champion Andrea Chenkovan over, or just under even, 100 points over Ethan Shackleton, who was able to take P2 off of Paul Garung once again last week. Dan Riley holding fourth place, even that would be an interesting battle. The 20 points separating second and fourth, and then another battle for fifth place. Stuart Towers, Carl Stewart-Woodard and Burt Welly. And Stephen Snell, of course, not in the league anymore. He dropped the position to Burt Welly last time out. Connor Stewart-Woodard is 9 or 11 even. I can't count today, ahead of Ollie Matthews, who's 1 ahead of Lucas Aracini. And then Jack Weaver and Brian Moore and Benjamin D split by 5. But Benjamin D, of course, does not race anymore either. We have Harry Jennings on just the 4 points in his final race in the championship, and potentially his final league race ever. And we have another driver who we will reveal a little bit later on, who it might come as a shock. He will be back. Championship then in the constructors, and it is 448 points to Ferrari, 251 to Mercedes in second place, Aston Martin on 200 in behind. Racing Bulls and McLaren split by 15 for fourth and fifth, and Williams ahead of Kick Sauber by, I believe that's the 18 points heading into this race. So a poor race from Williams could kick it really in Sauber's favour. But let's go trackside. We are watching on with Dan Riley. Of course, he is a big fan of this circuit right here, and he's hoping to demonstrate that here this evening. And he's on his first run, hoping to give himself the chance to set the real banker lap for the rest of this field. You really want to do that at this point in the session, just to establish yourself. It's kind of at a point in this season where it doesn't really matter what the drivers are able to do, so the pressure's off, and so sometimes it can really ramp up on some of these drivers, and Dan Riley might be seeing that right here, where he feels the pressure. We know how good he is around this circuit, and he'll be hoping today to demonstrate exactly what he is good at around here. And he's got a couple more corners to go to kick off his weekend, kick off his qualifying, and we'll see what he's been able to do in this first sector. And in his first lap, even, not the first sector, and he goes up fastest of all, of course, 123.155 is his first lap that he's going to be setting. Second driver won't be Brian Moore, he's invalidated. It'll be Ollie Matthews who goes up to second place. Stuart Towers in the final sector looking to set his lap and his first lap of this session. We'll see what the Williams is going to be capable of, and yeah, we'll definitely have an opportunity to see what the three-time champion is going to be able to achieve. And we'll go from one three-time champion to another in just a couple of moments' time. Stuart Towers around the final corner, and his lap is going to be a lap time of a 124.841. So the former three-time champion is currently slowest of all in this session. But just one thing that I'd like to bring to light as well. Stuart Towers, of course, was a three-time champion. The man who was invalidated actually on his first run, Andrea Chenkovan, well, he's managed to match him. He's taken 3 consecutive Drivers' Championships, matching the record set by Stuart Towers. And now that, well, we've received the sad news that Stuart Towers will be retiring from league racing altogether, we're going to hope that the former three-time champion is going to go out on a high. It'll be a very, very good thing to see if he's able to pick up a podium or something along those lines here today. But Andrea Chenkovan, of course, is the driver who currently has that mantle for himself, and he's going to very much carry that momentum through, you would imagine, into the next season of the Almost Pro Championship. And now with the pressure off of the of matching the driver up the very top of the championship history, really, then he can start to extend his advantage. That's what you get sometimes. You get drivers who really don't think about the pressure, or when they do think about the pressure, it can really, really push them on. And that might be the case for Andrew Chenkovan this season. Ethan Shackleton, the next driver on this circuit, ready to take his lap to a close. And well, he will be the bridesmaid here today if he's able to hold off. If he's able to hold off the likes of Paul Grung and Dan Riley. The battle for second in the championship, as Paul Grung actually goes quickest of all. The battle for second in the championship is just like this. Ethan Shackleton, 175 points. Paul Grung, 11 points off. And then Dan Riley, 9 points back on Grung and 20 points back on Ethan Shackleton. And so that's going to be a very interesting fight to watch here today, I would imagine, especially with Paul Grung demonstrating the quickest pace of all in the first runs. We have got everybody apart from Andrew Chenkovan now having set a lap, and there we go. I just tried to switch to Chenkovan and he set his lap. It was a 23.283, which puts himself up in third place. But just switching back to Ethan Shackleton for a second, and well, he's going to be hoping for second place, of course, but I think it would also be a little bit of a downer for him, simply because he's finished in the runners-up spot 4 times in APC before season 9, and he could make it a 5th, which would mean that he's spent half of the entire history of the Almost Pro Championship taking second place in the standings, and that is not, I'd imagine, a stat that he would want to he would want on his record, really, I would imagine. So, but yeah, we'll see what he's going to be able to do. But if Paul Grung is going to put up a performance like he has at the start of this qualifying session, it's going to be very interesting to see and to watch what he ends up doing. There is no, by the way, Connor Stewart-Woodard so far this evening, as Shackleton comes up to the line, and well, he's going to start on a new lap. But yeah, it's going to be a very interesting one indeed this evening to see, without Connor and without the teamwork of the two McLarens, what's going to happen. Although Connor allegedly is going to be racing. One driver that won't be, Jack Weaver, who has departed the league, unfortunately. So we will not be seeing any more of him. But I mean, it's set for an interesting battle up and down the field. There's still fights to go on at Owen Boldero. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, well, hello Joseph. Excited for the final round of the season, but I see a very big battle in sight on this one. The early runs in qualifying have shown us that Paul Grung has some very surprising pace. Andrea Chenkovan, our champion, currently sat in third place. I think it's going to be very interesting to see sort of the pace of the top 2 at the moment in this session versus Andrea Chenkovan, because although, you know, the top 4 they've had their moments, no one has been able to touch Andrea Chenkovan particularly. So this is the last opportunity for anyone to take it away and go for a win here, which of course the only 4 drivers to win so far this season have been Bert Welly, Paul Grung, Andrea Chenkovan and Ethan Shackleton. So can Dan Riley get that victory, which he has been chasing for nearly 2 seasons now?
Of course, we'll see, but what we'll see first is, well, the facts about the race wins this season. Well done for bringing that up, and well done for segueing. Of course, this does include the sprints as well, which is why that will total up to 15. Is that 15 total? That's 11, 13, 15, 16. I can't count today. 16. That is going. No, it is 15. I'm being stupid. It's 15 because there's 14 rounds in the season. There's 2 sprints, and this is round 14. So it will total up to 15. That's right, Andrew Chenkovan winning 9, Shackleton winning 2, Snell winning 2, and then Bert Welly and Paul Grung both winning 1 as well. But yeah, I mean, it is going to be an interesting race. We do have some drivers who claim they're comfortable on the circuit. We've got some drivers that are demonstrating that they are comfortable on this circuit. So it'll be very interesting. And well, Dan Riley, of course, one of those drivers who does claim to be good around here. He's well, he's not had the greatest of turn 1, so Dan is not necessarily going to be pushing, but I think he's still going to try and go flat out and try and catch up that gap between himself and Paul Garang, which currently stands at 5 hundredths of a second. Not quite yet, and he's going to, I think, maybe go another time, but 7 minutes 53 left in the session. Luca Seracini has just started on a lap.
Yeah, Luca now going for a second attempt in this session, just coming out of the first sector towards a turn 5 and 6 here. Probably, I'd say, the two most difficult corners on the circuit, as you try to tuck it into this inside. You've got to make sure not to hit this inside curb there, because you will go over that outside curb and invalidate your lap time. It's a really tricky one to get right. And I did a little bit of time trial just for a laugh about 20 minutes before this session when you first joined. I was doing it, Joseph, and I struggled quite a lot with that corner there, considering the fact I haven't raced in a while. So that's going to be a very challenging section in this qualifying for our drivers.
It certainly will be. I think there's a case to be made that most of these sections around the circuit are going to be tricky. It's not necessarily the easiest to overtake around here as Seracini invalidates, but what it is a very tight, twisty technical circuit that they will have to contend with. We're watching Brian Moore currently heading through the first sector and seeing what the Kicksauber can do. The lone soldier here today, as his teammate not here, not even in the league anymore, which is disappointing, of course, to see a driver go, and especially with it being Jack Weaver, who's had a lot of history in the league, for better or for worse. But yeah, Jack Weaver no longer here. Brian Moore trying to fly the flag, and if he's able to pick up P2, he will put the pressure on the team ahead, which is Williams, but I don't think that's very likely. He's improved by 367 tenths of a second, and well, he'll be hoping that time is going to be enough to push himself ahead of some of the others, as that's an unbelievable lap from Andrew Chenkovan, 22.506 from the Ferrari. And while Brian Moore is not going to be able to do that, he's going to be able to maybe improve by a second and catch up to Harry Jennings right at the back of the field and try and demote the Williams. He will come up to the line. It's a 25.1019, so it's not quite going to be enough to catch up to Mr. Tano, but a promising sign from him. Carl Stewart is invalidated. He'll be going again. Dan Riley is invalidated. He'll be going again. And Andrew Chenkovan, well, he's not pushing at all on this lap, so he will be going once again. But it's going to be very interesting, and I know I keep saying that, but it will. It's one of those things where it feels as though we're in a bit of a lull at the moment. By the end of this session, I feel like we're going to get sparks flying, because, of course, we've got two drivers up at the top in Chenkovan and Paul Garang, who are generally up at the top. You've got the likes of Dan Riley and Ollie Matthews, who feel comfortable and confident around this circuit. And then you get the likes of Luca Seracini and Ethan Shackleton, who may well spring a surprise.
Yeah, definitely there is potential for a few different surprises in this race. I mean, in the last few races, watch out for Luca Seracini. His pace, since I recently discovered that he has gone back to using assists, which would explain his pace improvement in the last few races. He's thrown in the towel and gone for assists again, but he's gradually, throughout the season, it's felt like, just slowly but surely got closer and closer to that top 5, which has been pretty unshakable for most of this season. But I'd say watch out for him, because I think he could deliver something in this race.
Certainly could, and well, he's just ahead of Stuart Towers at the moment, who, comes around the final corner, and he's set to 24.016. So it's going to be an improvement, but not enough to catch up Seracini just yet. But it's a good sign that Towers has been able to improve. 3 minutes and 57 left on the clock, and everybody in the pits for their final run preparations, apart from Towers, who will be heading in now, and he'll be trying to head in quite quickly so he doesn't get all of the lap traffic right ahead of him. And I think he's going to have to struggle to contend with it unless he's going to be quick through the final few corners on this racetrack, which, of course, is very difficult. I mean, it's Sector 3. It's not necessarily the easiest to overtake, which is, I think, why it's a bit silly that it's Sector 3, but oh boy, is it a challenge for the drivers.
Yeah, Sector 3 is a really weird sector. I think the double left-hander is one of the easiest places to invalidate. You know, the margin between invalidation and keeping it in the white lines, I find, is so narrow because there's so much time to be gained within that section if you get it right. As Stuart Towers now approaches it, actually, he's not pushing, but you can get a rough idea. You know, with it being a double left-hander, you're sort of mid-corner going back on throttle, and it's a really easy section to invalidate in if you're not careful.
It certainly is, and I think we've seen some drivers fall foul of it so far this evening. We haven't even got to the full push final runs of this session, so I'm sure we'll be seeing a few more of that as Stuart Towers is going to go again. He's not going to come into the pit lane. He thinks that those tyres are in good enough condition and he has enough fuel to take him around the circuit. He may well trip over Lucas Erracini, who's just coming out of the pit lane, but no, he gets through okay. And then he has the likes of his own teammate ahead to contend with. But the next one up will be Daniel Riley, watching on board with Stuart Towers as he heads through the first sector, and he does improve through there. So it's a good start to the lap from him, through the hairpin, down towards the straight. And this is basically the main straight on the lap. Whilst it's not the start-finish straight, it's where the most overtaking opportunities will be. It's where the most DRS will be picked up, and then down, braking on the curbing and turning in for the apex. And on the exit, it's a bit of a weird one. You don't really care about that first apex as long as you set yourself up well out of the second corner of that chicane, because it doesn't matter how much speed you carry through, it doesn't last long enough. Then the second DRS straight, which is the second overtaking opportunity, and into this braking zone right here, which of course has changed over the last few years of Formula One. It used to be a chicane, it is now a mid-speed corner. Then into the final sector you go, and it's going to be the final overtaking opportunity on the lap through there, and then you've got under the bridge and back through out onto the other end. Final two corners that beckon, and Stuart Towers here will be setting his final lap of this session. He was improving by 0.2 of a second, and around the final corner the Williams is able to set a lap time which is going to throw him right into well, 7th place, because he has improved, but again not quite by enough. He's 9 thousandths off of the back of Lucas Erracini. So these two matching pace, and Dan Riley hoping to match the pace of the current pole sitter Andrea Chenkovan.
Yeah, I wasn't quite able to see what he did in the first sector, so I can't give you rough timings on it. But now approaching turn 5, I think this is a pretty important part of the circuit. Rolling it through, looks pretty decent. Pretty careful on throttle on the exit there, as we now go on to the DRS straight, and we will get to the second sector split, so we will get a rough idea of his pace. He's a 10th up. So an improvement which would put him into P2 as Paul Grung now starts his next lap. But it wouldn't be enough to challenge Andrea Chenkovan as of yet.
Yeah, not quite yet. He needs to find a lot of time in this final sector for Dan Riley to see if he can improve on his lap. But not quite yet. Not quite doing for the Mercedes just yet. And I think it may well be that he will be starting from the second row of this grid, which is still a decent achievement, but he would have wanted a little bit more. Final corner beckons for the Mercedes, and he is going to set a time that is going to be a 22.698. So he's found time in that final sector, and he's come across the line as the checkered flag has waved. Watching Paul Grung, he's improved in that first sector. That does promise for his lap, but we'll switch over to Ethan Shackleton, who's in the final sector. Can he find any time to catch up to his teammate or anything like that? He'd have to find a second. At the moment, he's not even finding a 10th of a second, and 2 more corners for the Ferrari to see what sort of time he can establish himself in, as Stuart Towers will not be setting a time. He was on his outlap. He is not going to be around in enough time. Shackleton, 23.309. That puts him up to 4th place. What can Brian Moore do? He remains in last place, unfortunately for him, and that's going to be the end of Carl Stuart Woodard's session as well. Lucas Erracini goes up to 5th place, and Harry Jennings will be the next one to come up to the line. I think his teammate was trying to give him a bit of slipstream to take him past Carl Stuart Woodard, and maybe even himself. Is a 24.339 for the Williams around the final couple of corners. Ollie Matthews will not be improving. Andrea Chenkovan, is he going to establish his position up at the top even more, or is he going to be held up by that Aston Martin? It's certainly not gained him time on this final lap. Not that it needed to, because Andrea Chenkovan, for the 10th time this season, is on pole position.
Yeah, a really strong lap there from Andrea Chenkovan. He didn't even need a final run to go onto pole position. He backed out of his run pretty early in this. In it, he backed out of it within the first 3 corners. Dan Riley set a pretty nice lap time there in P2, but a 10th and a half back from our pole sitter. But the biggest surprise, as I said, was Luca. Luca finished less than half a tenth behind Ethan Shackleton. So watch out for that in the race.
Yeah, definitely watch out for the battles in the race, which is almost on our way. It's Andrew Chenkovan who took the pole position, Dan Riley in P2, Boldero who took third place, and Ethan Shackleton in fourth. Lucas Aracini rounds out the top five, and he'll be alongside Ollie Matthews on the third row of the grid. Then it's Stuart Towers, Harry Jennings, Carl Stewart-Woodard, and Brian Moore to round out your 10-car field. No Connor Stewart-Woodard, no Jack Weaver, so it'll be interesting to see when everyone has points what they're all going to do. And of course, with the likes of Harry Jennings potentially finishing lower down the order, but also getting the opportunity to pick up a couple of points to add to his tally, it's a good opportunity for himself as we're able to take you trackside on race day here in Abu Dhabi.
Going to be a very interesting race, I believe. In terms of tyre strategy, for most of these guys here, I believe it is going to be a two-stop for quite a few of them. I believe a one-stop is possible, but it's quite an awkward one-stop, if I remember correctly. So I imagine it's going to be a medium-hard, medium jobby, or medium-hard, something of that nature. I don't expect there to be too much variation within this race.
Yeah, well, we will wait and see as the formation lap is underway, and we'll get the opportunity to see what drivers are on what tyres. I managed to save that pretty well, as they are all on the medium set of compound tyres, apart from Ethan Shackleton, who's gone for the hards. Now, he'll be going long in his stint, and it'll be interesting to see how that one stacks up. Of course, all of my data and all of my experiences in the esports side, which I actually got told off for, because I show the tyres on screen for too long, apparently, which in esports, you can never show it for too long, because they've got engineers that run their strategies. When it's drivers running their own strategies, I'm guessing it's a little bit different. So if I do hang on it, please point it out in the YouTube chat. And if you're in the YouTube chat, say hi. Have a chat with us here today for the final round of this season. And make sure to stick around for the next one as well, which we'll bring you information on at the end of this race, at the conclusion of all of the laps that we'll be doing around Abu Dhabi here today. We've got a couple of drivers who came into the chat earlier on. Ollie Matthews, who said he does not feel confident, so maybe that's not me. Maybe that's me making that up. I don't know where I got that one from, really. I believe it was the interview last week or something like that, but maybe he's had the opportunity to reflect, and maybe he doesn't feel so confident. We'll wait and see as to what Ollie Matthews is able to do. 6th place at the moment, not a bad start, but he's going to have to improve on that, really, in the race if he wants any opportunity to beat the likes of Andrea Chenkovan, who's coming around the final couple of corners.
Yeah, as we get ready to line up for the main race in this one here, it's going to be very interesting. It's a very short run towards turn one, so it is quite literally all about your launch off the line. You don't have much road until you get to turn one. So we'll see what the Mercedes of Dan Riley can do as he lines up alongside Andrea Chenkovan. Can he get the launch over him in order to get into P1, which, as we've seen before, Dan Riley does tend to get some good starts.
Dan Riley definitely probably gets the best starts of everybody on this field, and I hope that it doesn't crash like it did last week. It is not going to. The 5 red lights are coming on for the final time in the Almost Pro Championship season 9, race number 14, and the drivers are ready. The action's underway for the final time here in the Almost Pro Championship. Chenkovan gets a strong start, but Dan Riley gets a better one, and he'll be on the inside into turn number 1. That might open the door for Paul Garung to get through on both of them. Lucas Aracini's going to try and slide his way through as well, and they're side by side into turn number 3, but it is going to be Paul Garung who takes the lead of this race. Chenkovan might even drop another position. He's fading down the order with Shackleton on the inside, and he gets through. So does Ollie Matthews, who remains alongside him, but a big slide from the Aston Martin into the wall for Ollie Matthews. That's a terrible start from him. It's a bad start from Chenkovan as well. And it's going to be Paul Garung with the best one of all. Dan Riley on the inside of Lucas Aracini trying to pull ahead of him and back up into P2 where he started. He's been able to just about find that gap, and he sets his sights now on our race leader, Paul Garung.
Yeah, absolute carnage at the start of the race. That spin from Ollie Matthews was caused by the fact he is running no assists today. He said this is the first time he has ever run no assists in a league race, and that unfortunately proving bad for him, as Stuart Towers has also gone round as has Kyle. So there's been some kind of mishap towards the back of the field as I was looking at Ollie Matthews. So we'll have to find out from the drivers in the post-race interviews what happened there. But on the end of lap 1, it's Paul Garung that leads from Dan Riley.
Certainly is those two at the top of the field at the moment, and Paul Garung, of course, with the fastest lap of this race into the pit lane comes Stuart Towers, and it's going to be a disappointing way to race his final race in the championship. But Paul Garung remains in that lead, and he will have a very good run heading into season number 10 if he's able to pull this one off. And at the moment it's looking like he's in a great position to 7/10 ahead of Dan Riley, but with the DRS for the first time, that's a bit of a twitch on the exit of the hairpin, which might open up the opportunity for the Mercedes to catch up. He's 6/10 back as they open up the DRS for the first time on this lap. They're both running basically off of the circuit, just on the runoff strip, and Dan Riley only able to gain into about 4/10 of a second behind. So maybe the straight line speed for Paul Garung is what is doing it for him, as the strategy is suggesting a 3-stop. I don't really think that's going to be possible today. I don't really think that's going to be a plan today, but either way, that'll be interesting to see. That's Brian Moore getting through on Harry Jennings as they fight for 6th place, and Harry Jennings back around the outside. Is he going to be later on the brakes? Well, Brian Moore isn't going to even get the opportunity to be alongside because the run from the Williams was just too great. Chenkovan now, he never really gets the greatest of starts, but this is probably his worst start of the season. He's right in behind Lucas Erracini now, and he's trying to recover, but it's going to be a little bit more difficult with everybody ahead of him having the DRS.
Yeah, DRS trains are something which are quite a common occurrence at Abu Dhabi. As you said earlier in the race, it's not the easiest circuit to overtake on, and the two overtaking opportunities that you do have can quite easily be counteracted with the fact that long DRS trains do tend to form around this circuit. So Andrea Chenkovan has his work cut out for him here in this race if he wants to win in this one here.
He certainly does. It'll be a difficult one for him, but of course Andrea Chenkovan, nothing is really difficult for him, it seems, in this championship, and that's why he's been able to be the second three-peat champion in the history of the series. And yeah, he's doing an incredible job at this moment in time, just to remain within the fight, really, within an opportunity of taking something decent here today. And of course, something decent for him, bare minimum, would be a race win, which is a weird thing to say, but with how dominant he's been, it's unsurprising. Lucas Erracini gets through on Dan Riley and moves up in 2nd place. Dan, who's I think just made a mistake there and opened up the door for Erracini to make his way through. And now this is an interesting one, because these aren't 3 drivers you would expect at the start of the season to be fighting at the end of the season at the very top of the field. I mean, I'll drag up, not to drag Lucas Erracini into the mud at all, but I'll drag up the top DNFs for this season if I can find the file. And well, it's not something that looks great on Lucas Erracini. He's retired the 2nd most, and Jack Weaver's retirements, who was the 1st most of them were decisions, and he just decided that it was going to be him done for the race, which is disappointing. Of course, those two retired way more than everybody else, at least 4 times more than everybody else. Paul Garung and Connor Stewart would have been the other DNFs in this season, but it doesn't look good for Lucas Erracini. But in this race, it's looking so much better for him to take maybe a debut podium. I believe it'll be a debut podium at least. That's Andrea Chenkovan, though, chasing on the back of him. He's gotten through on Dan Riley. He's up to 3rd place.
Yeah, our 3-time champion starting to recover his way through the field. But as you were saying about Luca, yeah, I said it earlier in the session, he's slowly but surely incrementally improved every race since he turned those assists back on. I think the time when he was running no assists was that area where he was DNFing constantly. He was struggling with adapting to no assists. But since then, he's improved slowly but surely. And I think in this race, he's starting to show his mettle, being able to compete with the top guys in the Almost Pro Championship.
He certainly is. It's a good run from him so far. Not to what's the word I'm thinking of? Not to,
glaze.
Well, not necessarily. Not to jinx him or anything at all, but he's doing a very good job at this point in time. Dan Riley, something's happened to the Mercedes because he's very much dropped off. 1.7 seconds is what he's off the back of this top 3 now. And it really opens up the door for Andrea Chenkovan to push forward. It really opens up the door for him to attack Luca Serafini because there's no pressure from behind, because he knows if he makes a small mistake, which is rare, if he makes a small mistake, he'll open up the door as that's Harry Jennings into the wall, out of the race, and it's a virtual safety car out on the circuit. It's a disappointing way to end off the Williams' campaign and career potentially in the Almost Pro Championship, but that is Harry Jennings, our first retirement of the race and his first retirement of the season as well. Disappointing to see him out, but ultimately it's going to take us down to 9 drivers, so he will finish off the season on 4 points in 14th place in the championship, and well, he'll be watching on and cheering on Stuart Towers in this race, I would imagine, considering the fact that not only does he only race when Stuart races, they are good friends, they are teammates, and he'll be hoping that his teammate can also round off his APC career on a high. But he's picked up a 3-second time penalty. He's in the pit lane, Stuart Towers, so it's not necessarily going well for either Williams as he makes a switch onto a set of the hard compound tyres. And that's going to be a drive-through penalty for... That's a drive-through penalty for Paul Garung, speeding under the virtual safety car. As we go back to green flag racing, he was quite clearly just going that little bit too fast at the worst time, and Paul Garung already in to serve it. That's cost him the race. I really do think it has, because now he's got to go through the pit lane again.
Yeah, definitely. Dan Riley coming in as well for a set of hard tyres after only 5 laps. So that is, I think, the most interesting thing of all. Dan Riley only being able to make mediums go 5 laps in this race. So that potentially suggests a medium hard strategy from Dan Riley in this race here. As now towards the top, Andrea Chenkovan taking the race lead back from Luca Serafini towards turn 5. Can Luca go for an attack towards turn 8 with the second dose of DRS you get from here?
Yeah, we'll see whether they're going to be able to, as that's going to be Carl Stewart through on Brian Moore, and Brian trying to fight it back, I think, or maybe just missing his braking point. Either way, he drops back in behind Kyle Stewart Woodard now, and Kyle moves up to 4th place. He's 10 seconds off of the back of Ethan Shackleton, and he'll be trying to close that gap as much as he can. But of course, at this point in the race, it's a little bit more stagnant. It's more about trying to create the opportunity for yourself more than anything else, and hoping that a mistake is going to be made, more than likely, although that might not be possible, so you might have to win on strategy. We've seen Kyle try and extend stints a couple of times this season. This might be his opportunity to do so, as that's fastest lap from Andrea Chenkovan, who extends his lead at the top over Serafini. He got through, and now he's really flexing his muscles, and this is what we've seen from the Ferrari all the way throughout the season. Whilst he has dropped positions on lap 1, he has been able to recover them pretty quickly. I don't have the statistic, unfortunately, for that, but what I do have is the statistic for point or positions lost this season, and positions gained this season as well overall. And positions lost, well, Jack Weaver 1.6, I'd imagine the retirements are going to play a factor in that. Harry Jennings 1.4, and Connor Stewart Woodard, who of course is not racing today, 0.7. Positions gained on a more positive note, and it is going to be Andrea Chenkovan as one of them, Stuart Towers and Benjamin D the others. Towers averaging a 1.5 gain, and Benjamin D 1.5 as well. Andrea Chenkovan 1.2, so slightly worse. But when you're starting from, when you're starting from the top few, you'll take that, to be honest. You'll take gaining 1.2 positions on average.
Yeah, well, I mean, anything positive in terms of positions gained is, of course, a good thing. You want to be moving forwards, not backwards. But I think the positions gained stat in general, I feel like it tells a story of this season as well. Andrea Chenkovan was always going to be positive because, he's had 10 pole positions this season. So he's only had to move forward in 4 of those races. And of course, positions gained and positions lost are only counted to your finishing position, not to what you start or lose on race starts and restarts, things like that. So Andrea Chenkovan was always going to be positive, and there are some other surprises with the stats like that within there as well.
Yeah, there certainly are. There's a lot of surprises. That's Luca Serafini into the pit lane and hopefully making a switch onto a set of the hard compound tyres. Indeed it is. Hard compound tyres for him. Stuart Towers has been in 3 times. So I'm not sure what's happening to the Williams, but yeah, it's very well done from Seracini to come out 12.4 seconds ahead of Ollie Matthews, who of course had problems at the start, and Seracini going for that undercut to try and do anything to challenge with the man up the top, who of course has been absolutely dominant under Echenkovan and will hopefully continue to be for his sake. Dan Riley through on Carl Stewart. We've seen spats between these drivers before. Will we see it again here today? Well, Dan Riley is just on the back of Paul Garung as well, so he'll be wanting to make his way past the man that was once the race leader. He will make his way past the man that was once the race leader, and this is where the pace advantage really starts to show from those at the top, because they've only just made their way past Carl Stewart and Brian Moore, and they've already broken the DRS. So it's interesting to see the gaps between these drivers just be created like it's absolutely nothing, and that's just the class of the drivers who end up at the top of the field.
Yeah, well, gaps being created in an instant like that, that's not something you get in esports, is it, Joseph? You know, you're much more used to fat DRS trains from P1 to P20, and this is the difference when you step out into the wider league racing world. You get a wide variety of paces and a driver skill. But throwing it back to the top 3, Dan Riley now is the one I'm watching at the moment. You know, he pitted early for those hard tyres, and probably, as I said, we'll be going on to another set of hards in maybe 10 laps time, a little bit less than that maybe. But the gap between him and Ethan Shackleton is already 10.5 seconds, so he shrunk that down nicely. So I do wonder, you know, can he win this race maybe on a weird 2-stop compared to the likes of Andrea Cenkovan at the top, because his pace at the moment on those hard tyres is very, very good.
I'm just going to briefly pause the stream, so apologies for this, but my screen is lagging like nobody's business, and I'm not quite sure why. So I'm going to hope that this is going to improve it, and apologies if this has affected your viewing experience at all. Lucas Seracini goes through on Carl Stewart Woodard for what will be 5th place, and well, he's demonstrating some real pace here today, Seracini, and it's one of those things where, of course, he's taken the assists off, he's been low on confidence, he's brought them back, and suddenly he's absolutely flying. So it shows what confidence can do for a driver.
Yeah, definitely. You know, just having that little bit of car stability underneath you does absolute wonders for your confidence, like you said. And I mean, he is actually catching Paul Garung at the moment. You know, obviously Paul Garung has yet to put in this race. Luca has pitted, so technically this is not even for position. This is for, you know, Paul Garung has still to pit because of that drive-through penalty that he had to serve, which would explain, you know, Luca's good pace in comparison to him. It's more just now a question of, once Luca gets past Paul Garung, can he begin to catch up to Dan Riley in 3rd?
Well, Dan's slicing that gap down to Ethan Shackleton at a rate of knots 8.7, splitting the 2 different drivers. And no, it just appears like the back straight is causing me FPS issues. So, I mean, I guess it must be the rumble strips or the millions of fans who make their way out to watch Abu Dhabi. What a slingshot that is from Lucas Seracini out of the corner. And he's going to be able to make his way through into 4th place. Is Paul Garung going to have anything to fight back with? No, he's not. What a move that is from Lucas Seracini. And, well, that's the move of a man full of confidence and ready to challenge for his first podium of the season here today. He'll be trying to close that gap down between himself and Dan Riley. That is currently 3.5 seconds, but don't forget he's got a 3-second penalty to add to his name and number at the end of the race as well, which will be potentially what's going to cost him a podium, and I think he'll be absolutely devastated if that's going to be the case.
Yeah, I think he would be absolutely frustrated with himself if it were to be what costed him a podium. You know, Luca, I believe, still chasing his first podium in APC, and this probably, on pure pace, is his best opportunity, because he is also slicing that gap to Dan Riley as well. You know, it's gone down from about 4.5 2 laps ago to now 3.4. So if he is going to get a podium, it's going to be staying with Dan on that stranger strategy. Same as him. They are in a fight for pure position at the moment. But just on your frame rate issues, I think this is a game glitch, because I have the exact same issue down the main straight at Japan. I've done 4 broadcasts at Japan on this game, on PC, and every single time I have had lag issues dropping down to about 30 FPS on the Japan main straight. So I think this is a game issue in some form.
Sounds about right for EA.
Yep.
I think it's when it goes to the rumble strips, it just can't take all the shapes and colours that we have. And so it just decides that it's not going to take the shapes and colours that we have. And just really slows it down, which is weird because it doesn't do it anywhere else in the circuit. But lap number 12 of 29 here today in Abu Dhabi. 17 laps to go of the Almost Pro Championship season. And, well, we've got exciting announcements to follow this race about the next year's calendar. And, well, it is the next year indeed. Of course, it won't be a full year calendar because we'll have, I was going to say a new game cycle. It's a new kind of 0.5 game cycle, as that's going to be Ollie Matthews through on Brian Moore, who appears to have made some sort of mistake. But it's going to be a season that spans, and I'll leak this information now before we go properly into the information dropping later on. Well, it's going to be starting in February, and it's going to run all the way through to about, if I can remember what the calendar looked like, it's going to run all the way through to May, so a 3-month calendar, very similar to this one, and some circuits that are drivers' favourites, some circuits that are not so drivers' favourites, as that's Brian Moore into the pit lane. And what is he going to switch on to today? It's going to be a set off the hard compound tyres. So yeah, looks like the 2-stop strategy is the way, but I think Brian might be trying a 1.
A 1-stop would be bold, and I personally don't think a 1-stop is gonna happen. I just think, especially, you know, for a controller player, a 1-stop is very, very difficult. Although possible, it's one of those 1-stops that's, it's not clearly easy, but it's also not clearly hard. So you're kind of stuck in the middle where you're probably on 80-85% in puncture range, but you're not far into puncture range. It's one of them weird 1-stops, but I personally wouldn't be going for a 1-stop here because I don't feel there's any advantage to it.
Yeah, we'll see what Brian Moore does. Of course, he may well have picked the information up from all the wonderful esports drivers that he gets the pleasure of commentating on in Console Tier 2 and World Online Racing. Of course, I do Console Tier 1 when I can be bothered, it appears, because I've been flaking the last few weeks. But yeah, we'll see what Brian Moore does end up doing strategy-wise. I think that that's a real possibility that that's what he could be doing. But yeah, we'll wait and see, as he is now trying to gain on the likes of Kostyuk Woodard, because Paul Garung into the pit lane. He's the latest to pit, and it feels as though he's tried to extend that first stint simply because he's had to visit the pit lane once. So I think it's a gamble from him, so he doesn't have to go through twice, in the hope that maybe something else happens like what happened to Mr. Taddo, Mr. Harry Jennings. But I think it's unlikely, and that's what's going to happen. But we'll, of course, wait and see as per usual. It's one of those things where you'd love to know the answer now, but we'll find out the answer later. And it would really help his strategy if he found the answer out now. But it's going to have to be something that he's going to find out later. And of course, in that battle for second, it's going to be really important for him as Andrei Chenkovan comes into the pit lane from the lead of this race. And this is going to be one that drivers are going to keep an eye on. Generally, follow the leader appears to be the strategy. And well, we'll see what sort of strategy the leader has gone for. It's a hard set of tyres. So I think for Chenkovan, it almost confirms that he's going on to a 1-stop.
Most likely, again, a very difficult 1-stop, but, you know, it is possible. You know, he's got to do 16 laps on those hards, and if he can do 13 laps on mediums, then he can probably do it on hards. You know, I doubt Brian, because, you know, he had some tyre wear issues. No offence to Brian, had some tyre wear issues at Qatar, but, you know, maybe he's found something. Maybe he's found a way to preserve his tyres a little bit to get that 1-stop working. You know, there are circuits where you can find ways around to limit the tyre wear. You know, Japan is one that I can think of where there are a couple of ways that you can sort of minimise that tyre wear a little bit. But, you know, I still think it's a difficult 1-stop.
Yeah, it certainly is. Well, I think Qatar would probably be the most difficult circuit in terms of tyre wear on the calendar, just because it's the nature of the circuit where it's fast and flowing, whereas there's a few more stop starts, there's a few more straights, So it's a little bit more of an opportunity to rest the tyres, and so they don't overheat, and so they don't have that real domino effect that may come into play when you're at a circuit like Qatar. But of course, at Abu Dhabi, you never quite know what could happen. It's why they have the season finale here. That and money is why they have the season finale here, where it's just it's one of those circuits where some drivers really specialise, really like it. Some drivers absolutely despise it and can't wait to get out of it. And that's what creates a couple of interesting dynamics here at the Yas Marina Street Circuit, where some drivers, the likes of Dan Riley, love it. Some drivers, the likes of, Ollie Matthews from the sounds of things, based on his YouTube comments, absolutely hates it, as Paul Garung seems to like it. Fastest lap of the race, heading to our former race leader, currently sitting in 6th.
I mean, I'm kind of indifferent to this circuit, in all honesty. I've had some good success in league racing here, back when I was still racing, but it wouldn't be my first choice, I think is the best way to put it. But yeah, it's a very divisive circuit, is Yas Marina. You know, as you said, there are some that love it, some that hate it, and it's a good season finale. I think there are better season finales, Brazil. But yeah, it's a good circuit nonetheless. But I feel like there are better ones for F1 in real life to end at.
Yeah, I think Brazil is the only real right answer there. I guess you can make a case for Las Vegas, but I mean, really, it's the spectacle, I think, at Las Vegas. And I think Brazil would provide better racing for a season finale, if that makes sense. But of course, we are not the FIA. We do not decide these things. And so it's purely speculation and drama that you can push onto a career mode rather than the real life Formula One, which of course we have no control over. Lap 16 of 29. I wish to have control over it one day. That'd be fun. And that's going to be yellow flags out. That's going to be an incident and an issue for Dan Riley, who I think has just had a half spin off the exit of turn number 3. That is hugely disappointing for the Mercedes. And well, he's going to drop down to 4th place, and that breaks all the momentum that he's built up.
Yeah, really unfortunate for Dan Riley there, but luckily it's not the end of the world. You know, he's not lost too much ground from it. You know, he's just behind Andrea Chenkovan, although Andrea obviously has much newer tyres. But crucially for him, he is still with Luca Serafini, who, well, as it stands, this is a battle for the podium, for maybe even P2 in this race. So a very, very interesting battle incoming, thanks to that spin from Dan Riley. And can Luca get on the podium here today?
I'd be interested to see if he can. I very much would be. And he's in a good position at the moment. Dan Riley will be a little bit knocked down, but he'll see if he can get back up again for the rest of this race. It's 1.7 off the back of Serafini, who looks quicker. And don't forget, though, that he's got that 3-second time penalty to add to his name at the end of this race. And Dan Riley actually into the pit lane. So did Dan Riley have damage? This could be vital in the context of this race. Riley's into the pit lane. No, he's making a switch onto a new set of the hards. So maybe he's just struggling with tyre wear. That's fascinating to see from Dan Riley. And, well, I'm not quite sure what the strategy is. I guess it's 12 laps to the end. But of course, it will all be. We'll get to see what happens with Dan Riley's strategy at the end. We'll get to see what happens with everybody's strategy at the end. And what might be a struggle on strategy is the fact that the two Ferraris are so close together on the circuit. Of course, Shackleton, though, has not pitted yet. And so Andrea Chenkovan is going to extend that gap, you would imagine. And of course, with that gap being quite a big chunk over the rest of the field so far, it only looks set to increase. So I am going to bring it up. I brought it up momentarily, but the tyres at the moment, Andrea Chenkovan 3 laps on those hard 16 for Ethan Shackleton, because of course he's not dived into the pit lane just yet. Then Luca Serafini with 9-lap-old hards. It's going to be 13 laps for Ollie Matthews, 4-lap-old mediums for Paul Garung, brand new spanking softs, or softs, mediums even, for Dan, or hards even, for Dan Riley. That's Shackleton into the pit lane, and I can't speak. Carl Stewart Wood had 7 laps, 5 laps for Brian Moore, and 12 for Stuart Town. So split in strategies. It's not like everyone's coming on the same lap, and that does make it interesting, especially towards the end of the race, where there's a 1 or 2 lap offset, and it's that can be huge on this year's game cycle.
Yeah, a 1 or 2 laps offset, while sounding not like much, is a big difference because tyre wear is so naturally high in this game. You know, that 2 laps is going to be sometimes 8 to 12%, depending on the circuit, which is not an insignificant amount, I think it's fair to say. And that's probably worth 3/10 a lap, maybe a tiny bit less, but it's definitely a pretty substantial amount as now Dan Riley comes up to attack Paul Garung on the newer hards compared to 5-lap-old mediums. Round the outside he goes, and that is not much of a competition put up from Paul Garung. Maybe he's thinking of trying to fight it towards turn 8.
Yeah, potentially for Paul Garung. He might be trying to fight it with Dan Riley. I mean, it wouldn't be surprised, but Dan, I think, just has the pace with those brand new tyres. Those mediums already going off after 4 laps. So Paul, I don't think he's going to have much of a leg to stand on as far as that fight is concerned. And it might be more of a case of him dropping back into the arms of Ethan Shackleton. And, well, we'll see what happens there, both outside of DRS, but I think Shackleton's going to be back in it. Indeed he is, by the time they will get back into the next DRS zone. And then the fight will be on once again. And then towards the end of the race, the fight will be on between Dan Riley and Shackleton once again, which could spell a good sign for Luca Seracini. They fight, they lose time, Seracini takes P2. That would be absolutely huge for the V-Carb. As he heads towards the final couple of rounds of the season, and of course, as I mentioned many times, they'll be looking towards next season. They'll be looking towards the new year. They'll be looking towards performing well, and yeah, we'll get the opportunity to see what they will do. We do have a couple of driver updates coming through, one of which from Luca Seracini. And how is he feeling about the last race? Well, very strong would have been P4 if he just stayed out. What has changed since he last raced? As we'll watch Shackleton get through on Paul Garung with not much fuss. Nothing really, still been practicing medium traction control, but he's using full traction today and it's working out for him. He's got no idea how he felt about Abu Dhabi pre-race, but he is awful in Sector 3, and his expectation is 6th place, and he wants to add, thank you for the amazing season, everyone. Of course, he's not had the greatest of seasons on track, but it has been overall good fun, I'd imagine, to race out there on the circuit. It's been good fun in the commentary box. The other driver that we've got updates from is Stuart Towers, who of course is struggling in this race. He didn't do as badly as last season, last time out. As that's another 3 second for Seracini coming into the pit lane. That could be devastating for him, and we'll see what comes of that one, because of course he got that coming into the pit lane. So sometimes it can give you a glitch cut. Speaking from esports experience, Julian Klaffenbach got 6 it wasn't 6 warnings. It was, I believe, 13 warnings in the same corner going into the pit lane. Don't know why, because it literally all it was he was going into the pit lane. But it glitched, gave him a million warnings, and he had to get that removed. Lucas Seracini, I'm sure, would be looking at getting that removed. I believe Stuart Towers did the same thing as well. I won't bring it up. I hope that Mr. Boldero is able to bring it up within the next couple of minutes. But yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with that one. And of course, don't forget about the Drivers' Championship, which is still a fight that's very much on, and a fight that's looking very, very good at the moment for Lucas Seracini. He currently finds himself fighting for 9th place in the championship. Of course, no Connor here today, and I've missed the animation because I've clicked on the wrong button, but Connor has 65 points, Ollie Matthews 54, Lucas Seracini 53. If it was to stay as it is, with Seracini picking up 10, he would be able to climb past Ollie Matthews, who would get right back. No, Ollie Matthews would stay behind. And actually, Matthews, speaking of, gets through on Carl Stuart Woodard. So if Seracini basically is able to finish in the top 4, he has the top 9 on a lot, which will be a good performance from him indeed. Looking at the other battles in that championship, of course, we touched on the battle for 2nd place earlier on, and we'll touch on the battle now for hang on, trying to work out how I did this before. There we go. Trying to have a look at the battle for 5th place, which was Stuart Towers in the lead. Kyle currently picking up points, and Bert Welly not racing, so Kyle looks like he's in a good position to take that one. I mean, he's currently just moved up 6th place. Stuart Towers in 9th. as Paul Garung is going to be coming out of the pit lane ahead of him. So that'll be 2 points heading Stuart Towers' way. That'll be 8 points heading Carl Stuart Woodard's way. And he would see his way through on Towers by 4 points. That would be very, very good. There's also a fight in the Constructors' Championship. That's for 4th place, and it's between the Racing Bulls team and the McLaren team. So it's between, basically today, Saraceni against Carl Stuart Woodard. There's 15 points that split them, and well, Saraceni needs P2 really if he wants any opportunity at this. It's not really a fight that's on because there's only one driver from each team, but still, it's the only mathematical fight that can still be up for grabs here in APC for the final round of this season in the Constructors, of course, as I went through the drivers as well. So there's still fights to be had out on this circuit for the points. But of course, I think at this point in the season, it's all about the glory.
Yeah, although in most cases, you know, the race doesn't count for too much. It's a matter of pride for a lot of these drivers, and one driver who will have a lot of that at the moment is Andrea Chenkovan, currently leading by 22 seconds, of course, because Dan Riley and co all came into the pits twice, other than Ethan Shackleton, who stayed out on a very long one-stop, whereas Andrea Chenkovan has only pitted once, and, of course, built a very nice gap in the first stint of this race, which has caused him to have that 22-second gap. And I mean, well, he's got as big of a gap as there are as laps gone so far. So a very strong performance from him, as expected.
Yeah, it certainly was expected from Andrea Chenkovan. He was going to be able to seal this title on a high, and indeed he has been. Of course, he sealed it a while ago, but he's had the opportunity to extend his gap, as I've noticed that my mic volume is a little bit lower than Owen, so I'll just try and change that one right now. I've noticed it halfway through the race, which is useful because then you get to not see the racing for a moment, but there we go. We're back to the racing, and hopefully that sounds a little bit better. It's a little bit higher, a little bit more matched. Either way, it's absolutely fine on my end because I don't have to listen to myself, which is one of the benefits of this. I get to listen to my own voice, and at the same time, I don't have to listen to it at all because I'm not the one watching it back. You are. And hello to those of you watching on the replay, and hello to those of you watching live as well. I know we've got a couple of drivers who are watching on with this stream, one of which being Ollie, another one being Kyle, and so it's a very, very good. It's been a good broadcast. It's been a good season altogether, and well, we've done a few experiments throughout the course, and it's as I'd say it's been pretty successful. Fastest lap of the race once again, Paul Garung, as he's made a switch to the softs, as that's a 3-second time penalty for Brian Moore. 23 of 29, and Andrea Chenkovan is almost pulling out a 23-second gap. It's a 21.9-second gap that he's managed to hold at the moment, and it does look like that's going to increase very, very shortly, and it's going to increase very, very bigly, as one certain political leader would say. We did have our former race leader who was in a good position, Paul Garung. Well, he's currently stranded behind his teammate in 6th place, and I think he'll be very disappointed with the way that this race has gone, because his pace was looking good. But again, I'll keep saying it, even if you perform badly now, it promises well for next season that he was able to keep that pace up.
Yeah, definitely. I think any pace you show within this final race is a good indicator heading into next season. You know, with a very, very big gap, you know, a 3-month break in between seasons, it gives drivers that opportunity to hone their skills, get a little bit better at F1 25. You know, F1 25, a very different game to 24, and although we've had about 4 months on this game, you know, there's still room for improvement for a lot of drivers, and I think that is what they'll be doing throughout the summer, or not summer break, the winter break, I suppose. They'll be looking for that extra 1,000th of a second, which could potentially contribute to a pole position later in a later season.
It certainly could, and I mean, the practice does make perfect, and the more you play on this game, the more opportunities you get to learn, and every single race is a learning experience. So that's why I would never advocate for retiring early. One certain driver that is not part of the league anymore, but we mentioned why earlier, or we didn't mention why, but we mentioned that he isn't part of the league earlier on. That's just why I wouldn't advocate for retiring early like he would, and that's why he is the driver with the most DNFs across the course of this season. It's always worth having a go, having a learning experience, because the more time you get in the car, the better. Lap 25 of 29, and it will be lap number 26. Well, not in a short while, because it's another lap that Cenkovan's just ticked over to. But yeah, he's doing very well at the moment as Lucas Aracini is closing in on Ethan Shackleton. But he's not closing in, I don't think, by enough. Those 6 seconds even of penalties is really going to cost him. And he's only got a 2-lap undercut, or overcut even, 2-lap younger tyres is what I meant to say, over the car in front. So I don't think he's going to have that much of a benefit. It's the likes of Dan Riley that he's going to want to have a look at. But, I mean, because of the fact that they're on mediums, it's only a matter of time, I think, before the advantage gets neutralised.
Sorry, I didn't quite catch that. What did you say?
I was talking about the tyre offset between the hards and the mediums, and the fact that Dan Riley's are older, but it's about this time where it is just going to get neutralised and the advantage isn't going to matter that much between himself and Lucas Aracini.
Oh yeah, definitely. I don't think there's going to be too much matter on the tyres at the moment. I mean, there's a 7.8 second gap between the two at the moment, and also the fact that Lucas Aracini has 6 seconds worth of penalties. So unless Luca installs some rockets onto his car, I don't think it's going to be possible for him to get any further in this race, and could actually come under threat from Ollie Matthews behind him.
Would be a shame for Lucas Aracini. It feels like he's bottled that podium. But, of course, that's the way the cookie crumbles. And he's had experience twice in a row for running in a fight for a podium, which, of course, is no mean feat. Of course, there's 10 drivers here. There's only 3 podium spots. So anyone running near there is doing pretty well. And Lucas Aracini, this promises for next season, especially now that he gets the opportunity to run in the off-season to try and practice doing runs on no assists or medium assists or full assists, whatever he would like, just so he can prepare himself well for next season and try to challenge up the very top of the field. Of course, the very top of the field is what we're watching right now, Andrea Chenkovan, who, I mean, we've watched so much throughout the course of this season, and sometimes we've watched not at all, simply because he's just been too good.
Yeah, Andrea Chenkovan has been completely unbeatable at times this season, and this race has been one of those where he has been unbeatable once again. There's a reason he has taken a pole position in 70% or so of the races this season. It's been an unbelievable season for him, and I think in terms of dominance, it might be his most dominant championship of all. In season 1, he barely won it from Montserrat Reversi, or sorry, not season 1. In his first title, he won it barely from Montserrat Reversi, who unfortunately couldn't race Abu Dhabi, which is why Andrea Chenkovan was able to win that one. And then in his second season, he had competition early in the season from the likes of Aaron McGurk, and then later George Chapman. But this season, he's just been completely bulletproof, completely untouchable from others. And I think this race is a perfect example of what he's been doing race after race.
Aaron McGurk and George Chapman, what throwbacks. Of course,
Yep.
as they were last season's contenders, and I'm still in relatively regular contact with Aaron McGurk because he has turned to commentary instead of racing.
He has,
And,
yes.
Well, it's. I mean, I got the opportunity to commentate with him a few weeks back, and yeah, it was an interesting experience to say the very least, because it's one thing commentating on somebody, it's another thing, and it made me feel very old commentating with him, where it's kind of, he's retired from the league racing scene and he gets to do this, and it'll make me feel old again, even though I know that it means nothing that Brian Moore could potentially be commentating alongside me very soon. But let's hope that doesn't happen. Let's hope I'm just able to keep raising my levels and running away from Brian as we head to the penultimate lap of this race. And Andrea Chenkovan is going to be leading us onto it, 23 seconds ahead of Dan Riley, and he's been so dominant. Lucas Aracini has kept closing the gap to Shackleton, but it's not going to be enough.
No, unfortunately, it won't be enough for him, with that 6 seconds of penalties that he has accrued. He's not going to be able, unless, as I said, he straps some rockets to his car, he's not probably going to be able to gain 7.5 seconds nearly on Ethan Shackleton, who has made that hard medium strategy, to be fair to him, work very nicely. He's on the podium, although he's not challenging Dan Riley. He's on the podium, which is something he wasn't after qualifying.
I think there's a lot to be said for confidence in your own strategy and confidence in your own ability. And I think he had the confidence in his own ability to hold on to those tyres where some other drivers did not. And I think that's been what's really helped him today, where he's had the opportunity to keep going on those tyres. He's given himself the chance to keep going on those tyres. And yeah, he's really, really reaped the rewards of it here today. But we will head on to the final lap of this race with Andriy Chenkovan in the lead. And of course, he doesn't need strategy. He doesn't need anything apart from maybe better race starts. And he's just an absolutely dominant driver. He is the second three-time champion of APC, the second three-time champion consecutive seasons in APC. And he's been a lot more dominant than the last. The last one, of course, is in this race today. But the two three-time champions sandwich the field. It's Chenkovan at the top. It's Stuart Towers at the bottom. And it very much feels like a passing of the guard. Towers dominant over his 3 seasons where he was champion. And now the mantle has switched and the pace has gotten quicker. And he hasn't been able to keep up with the Croat, who has been racing for Ferrari. And it's just been such an unbelievable season, as that's going to be Brian Moore off in the foreground. So not sure what happened to him. Maybe he's
got a puncture
under braking. Oh, another puncture for Brian Moore across the course of this season. How many punches has he got? I know he got one at Qatar, and it's another one here today. Disappointing for him. But as the final few corners beckon for our championship leader and our championship holder, a 3-time champion deserves a very big bow. He was challenged at the start of this race, but just like every race this season, he warded them off, he batted them off without even batting an eyelid. And ever since then, he's just been absolutely dominant, flying away from everybody else. And he's only got one more corner to go to end off his season. Andriy Chenkovan, we said it 3 weeks ago, we'll say it again, he is champion of the Almost Pro Championship, and he rounds off his season with a victory lap in style. Dan Riley has only just entered the final sector, but he's done well all in himself to pick up a 2nd place, and the Mercedes doing a very good job to pick up a podium on the final round of the season. A season that has been a very promising one from him, heading towards future and heading towards Season X. Then it'll just about be Shackleton warning off Seracini, who picked up another penalty at the end of that race on the final lap. Then it's Ollie Matthews who climbs past Seracini. It looks like it'll be the same situation for drivers further back, as that looks like it might have actually been Carl Stewart Woodard getting through on Paul Garung, who might have had
Paul
a problem
Garung's
by
got a
himself.
puncture.
Right rear puncher for Paul Garung, and he and Brian Moore have ended off their seasons on a low point, really. And, Paul Garung, I mean, that race has just gone from bad to worse for him. But, again, pace promises for Season 10, and that's what he should be taking out of this race, rather than anything about his puncher. And he's actually going to try and reverse to the line, because he's got more grip on those front tyres than those rears. So he's going to use them as his rear tyres, and that makes perfect sense. But he and Stuart Towers will be the final drivers, as Towers, I believe, has got a puncture all to himself. No, he's just doing donuts. And why wouldn't you? 3 times champion of the Almost Pro Championship. And he's retiring from league racing. Hasn't necessarily been the greatest of retirement laps for him, but what it certainly has been is a good run for himself. And the Williams just enjoying his final few moments on circuit before coming to the line on lap 29 of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. That is the end for Stuart Towers, and we'll end off when Paul Garung decides he wants to drive to the line, and he's going to try and navigate this final corner well. Is he going to be able to do it? Well, that's going to be Andriy Chenkovan's AI coming through to lap him. So I'm going to say no is the answer to that question. But Paul Garung will be the final driver to finish us off for Season 9. And, that was a very interesting way to finish off our season. We will get the chance to speak to a few of the drivers in just a moment's time once we've run you through the order of the way that the final round of season number 9 has finished, and it is going to be Andrea Chenkovan, of course, celebrating on the podium. He takes the victory ahead of Dan Riley in second place. Then it's Ethan Shackleton picking up third, Ollie Matthews in fourth, Lucas Erosini in fifth, Kyle in sixth, Paul Garung in seventh, Brian Moore in eighth, Stuart Towers in ninth, and then Harry Jennings, who unfortunately retired from the session earlier on, he rounds out the field in 10th place with no points added to his name. We are going to get the opportunity to speak to first Brian Moore, who, of course, right at the end of that race. I've brought you in. I've interrupted your conversation, but I mean that's the nature of the waiting room. It's disappointing to get a puncher on the final lap of the season, even. But I mean, do you want to just sum that race up for us?
2 punctures during the course of the race, actually. Yeah, I got one at the end of my first stint. But the race, it wasn't too bad. I mean, it was a nice battle with Harry right near the start of the race. Until I don't know what happened to him. I was sitting in behind him and he just seemed to lose the car. But it was sort of a race where I was just sitting back and doing what I could, really. Just trying to finish the race and finish the season off strong.
Yeah, fair enough. And of course, you ended up in 8th place, which I mean, the departure of your teammate isn't going to help you in the Constructors' Championship at all. And what it does is it means that you've been able to climb over him, or just climb 1 point behind him even at the end. So, I mean, it's pretty much matched between you two. But heading towards the next season, of course, hopefully a new teammate with Jack Weaver not being in the league at all. Just how exciting is the prospect of season 10 in general?
No, it's very exciting, the possibility of a new teammate. Obviously you never know who you're going to get. I wouldn't mind anyone here. They're all great drivers here. I'm excited to know or find out who it is come around season 10, and season 10 as a whole. Hopefully it can be a best season. Hopefully less punctures. That's the main thing I'm targeting, and hopefully some more points in this season.
Some more pit stops then heading into the next season. And well, I mean, it's not been a bad one by any stretch of the imagination, but do you want to just give me your highlight of the season in general?
There's a few which it could be, but that's a good question. I'm not sure really what my highlight of the season will be.
Fair enough. Well, I mean, I did put you on the spot with a difficult question there. So, I mean, feel free to no comment and pass it on. I'm sure that we'll get the opportunity to discuss it in our post-season show next week. So don't be a stranger. And until next time, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's weird doing end-of-season interviews because you don't know when you're going to speak to them next. Well, you do. It's 3 months' time. But it feels a little bit weird. And then we're going to go from one driver who had bad luck to another who had bad luck. Ollie, do you want to just sum up the final round of the season?
Honestly, probably my best race yet. That might seem counterintuitive, but I turned off assists 2 days ago. I had a little bit of contact lap 1, which ended up spinning me around due to my own mistake. And I had enjoyable pace to 2 stop to the end. I was planning on 1 stopping. I kind of sweated it out and knew what I was going for, but damage lap 1 kind of ruined it. And I was expecting P6 with how the gaps were forming, and with Luca's pen and Paul's drive-through inevitably just gave me 2 free positions. So
yeah, fair enough. And well, of course, you did join halfway through the season, heading towards the next. 1, are you hoping to be a full-time driver? And 2, if you are, what are your aspirations?
I'm hoping that I can be a bit better without traction control and be fighting for more consistent podiums. I think in the rounds that I'm here, I'm probably now known as Mr. P4, because I finished all but one of my races in 4th, I think, which is annoying to be known by. But yeah, if I sweat over over Christmas. Maybe I'll come back stronger, title contender, maybe, and hopefully take the game to Schenkerman.
Very potentially, it'll be very good to see you trying to take the game to Chenkovan. But well, until then, it is goodbye. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
I need to stop signing off the interviews with "it is goodbye" because that's how I sign off the streams. Not that you're able to hear the whole thing because for some reason it cuts me off. So I don't really know what's going on with that one. But yeah, we'll quickly brush past that and we'll move on to the next driver in the interview room, which I am going to make. I think we're going to bring in Dan Riley next. Hopefully he's not talking. He's not talking. Wonderful. Well, I mean, he'll get the opportunity to do so now. Dan, do you want to just sum up the final race of the season in what looked like a pretty good performance from yourself?
Yeah, that was probably highlight of the season. When Paul Grong overtook me on points a couple rounds ago, I didn't think I would catch up to him, but I've been absolutely mega in these last couple races. Obviously, I did have to, hope that something bad happened to him. I think it was a puncture on the last lap, but P3 in the Drivers' Championship by 3 points. I just worked out. So yeah, absolutely mega. I'm absolutely buzzing about that. But it was a bit of a messy race overall. Qualifying was really good. I didn't actually expect to have really good pace in quali when Chenkovan put that lap in, but it was a bit of a messy turn one as well. Stints were just everywhere. I was just boxing and just hoping, and just somehow it just worked out for me. And I'm just so happy that it did, because P3 in the Drivers' Championship, I wanted it not last year, but last season. I wanted it last season. Unfortunately, Carl, he got the better of me, but this season, yeah, just really buzzing about it.
Yeah, fair enough. It's a very good feat to have picked up. Next season, then, looking towards that one, you're looking for a championship, or are you just looking to add on to the improvement that has been seen?
Well, I mean, it kind of depends on a few things. I don't know if Cenkovan's driving next season. If he is, then you should just give him the championship already. I can't lie, but I think my pace this season can prove that I can battle for podiums and race wins. And I'm not actually that far off of Ethan in the Drivers' Championship. So hopefully I can get P2 maybe. We got P2 in the Constructors as well, with me not having a teammate for half a season. So yeah, hopefully we can go for the Constructors' Championship next season. It kind of depends on the teammate I have, but we'll have to see next season.
Who are you hoping for out of the current lot?
Well, my driver's application, I put either Andrea Chenkovan or Ethan Shackleton, just anyone, so I can just have a good championship fight. But yeah, it doesn't matter who I have, but as long as we compete.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll see you not next week, next year.
That's all right. See you next year, guys. Cheers. Thank you.
There you go. That's a better way of signing off an interview. Whether it doesn't make it sound like I'm ending the stream, we'll next speak to because I want to speak to Kyle at the end about a few more things, but we'll speak to our very own Jamie/Ethan Shackleton, who, I mean, not a bad race, not a bad season. How would you sum up? We'll start with that Abu Dhabi Grand Prix.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with the result there, because this isn't a track that I like, and my pace is quite poor. But I guess I got a bit lucky with some incidents for some other people, but my strategy really helped today to push me up the order, doing something different to everyone else.
Yeah, it definitely did. I think it was a one stop, which not many people attempted. Owen said wouldn't work, but it ended up working out for you. Was it a case of just managing the tyres from minute 1 to minute 29 or lap 29 or whatever it is? Or was it more of a case of you were comfortable in the car?
I expected to be... I was more comfortable than I expected. So I was tyre saving until about lap 12 or 13, and then I realised, oh, these are actually holding up a bit better than I thought. So then from then on out, I was just driving normally, but not very quickly, because they were quite knackered.
And then, of course, you ended up with what ended up being a pretty good result. Heading towards next season, one, how much does that promise? And two, what are the aspirations?
Yeah, the aspirations for season 2 would be to cement myself as P2 in the championship again, because definitely in the second half of this season, I've not been, if there was a mini table for the second half of the season, I'd probably be 4th. So my pace has faltered. So I need to make sure that I up my game next season.
Well, hopefully we'll be seeing you right at the very top. But thank you very much for speaking to us today, and we will see you next season.
Thank you, guys. See ya.
See you. And then that means, and I'm sure he will deduce it, that we will speak to Kyle last. And of course, it wasn't necessarily the race that went the way you would have wanted it, but how would you sum up the final round of the season?
Oh yeah, you know what? I've just fallen off the end of the season. I don't really know why. I just yeah, it's just kind of the pace has gone very much downhill, which is a shame because I enjoy doing this. But yeah, the race was it was messy, wasn't it? I mean, I managed to get a good start on Stewart, and then I think I tapped Ollie a little bit, which was a bit annoying, but I luckily didn't really cause him any issues. And then yeah, I don't really know what happened with Stewart in the second sector. I messaged him to ask if that was my fault because I didn't see any arrows. I didn't see proximity arrows. I didn't really know he was there, if he was there. The next thing I know, I felt a bit of wheel locking, and then he kind of went straight on. And then I waited up for him because we're in a championship battle for 5th, so it felt a bit unfortunate for it to end if I had but if I had pushed it off, it was my fault. I didn't want it to be like, well, you got 5th position because you basically punted your rival off. So I waited up for him, but then he boxed the end of that lap, so that was kind of for nothing. And I don't know up till this point actually I'll tell you what, he did message me, but I'm not sure at the moment if that was my fault, if I caused him the damage or if he had it from before. So yeah, it was me apparently, but yeah, so that's annoying. That's a shame. I didn't want our championship battle, especially given it's Stuart's last race, didn't want it to end like that. But yeah, with Bert not showing up as well means I got the position I needed. I got the 5th position was the highest I could have probably got this season, so I'll take it. But yeah, it was a shame. It was a shame for that. And then yeah, it was pretty lonely after that, really. Teammate didn't really turn up this week either, so apparently he got an injury. So pretty lonely. So Brian was my only friend on track today, and he was quite fast. So it was quite fun. Actually, Harry Jennings, it's really a shame for him. I think he won on his own as far as I know. I was behind him. I couldn't really see. But he was faster than me in quali. Or had a faster time at least. So yeah, I think they would have both been quite fun to battle. So it's a shame I didn't really get a battle with Harry today on his last race as well. But there we go. All I can say is I've got what I need. I've got a position. I've got the points I needed today. So we'll take it. I can't be upset about that.
Certainly so, and I mean that sums up the race in the season pretty well. And well, heading towards the next season, this is the reason I wanted to bring you in last. Is we're going to have an opportunity to have a look at the provisional calendar for season number 10. And well, I figured it would be good if we had the opportunity to walk through it with you. And so if you could bring up your version of the calendar, that would be really good, just to have a little chat about it before we get the opportunity to have a real deep dive into it before the next season. So we're going to have a look at the at this graphic, what we're going to be contending with for season number 10. So we'll be starting in Bahrain on the 10th of February. The 17th of February, we're going to head to Saudi Arabia, and then we'll leave Asia and head over to Europe for Austria. Then debatably Europe at Silverstone for round 4, the sprint at Belgium, of course, as we've had for the last few seasons, for round 5, then Hungary and Netherlands to round out the first half of the season. Then we have a week's break. We head back to Italy for Monza for round 8, Baku for round 9, and then over to the Americas for rounds 10, 11 and 12. Texas will be a sprint race, 11, round 11 of the season being at Brazil, and then Las Vegas rounding off the American leg before we head over to Asia and Qatar and Abu Dhabi to round off the season, of course, finishing it off the same way that we have this season. So, I mean, just talk me through your opinions on this calendar now that we've been able to bring it out, and well, your favourites, your least favourites, some of the thoughts behind some of the circuits on there, and well, just summarise that in general.
Yeah, well, it's nice to have, I think, Saudi Arabia and I think Vegas back. I mean, they're not the most loved tracks in the world, but they are quite fun. I think a lot of people enjoy the kind of chaos they can bring. So, yeah, I think like a few of these were driver voted. So Netherlands, Monza, Baku, and I think Qatar and Abu Dhabi. They were driver voted. So they were keen to have them back on there. So it's always always good to see. You got your usuals, your Bahrains, your Austrias, your Belgiums, your Silverstones, your Brazils, they're on every season because everybody loves those ones. And yeah, starting out in Bahrain, and then you've got Hungary, which kind of comes on every few seasons. So that's mixed reviews. We call that one mixed reviews. Not one that I tend to go too well at, but I think for me personally, the Monza one that I enjoy. Although I'm not always necessarily the quickest. Baku again, I enjoy. I think looking at this, a sprint at Belgium, that's gonna be a hard one, I think. But if you are at the back of the grid and you do get your reverse grid and you do start on pole, then it's quite hard. It can be quite hard to overtake if you get your lines right. So it could reward somebody at the back. And then sprint at Kota, which is a place we've done sprint before. That's quite a fun one. I think did I win a sprint there once? I won an actual race there. I don't remember. No, I won a sprint at Austria, so ignore me on that. But yeah, there's some good tracks in there. I think Vegas is one of those crazy tracks where you either love it or you hate it. I think that's going to be the one that's going to probably have the most action in it. I think our previous race at Vegas, we've done it once before. I think there was quite a lot of action in that one. I think you were commentating on that one, I believe. I think it was only a couple of seasons ago, so that was quite wild. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes again. But yeah, and then obviously now the only unknown we have is when this DLC is going to drop for the F125 game. I mean, we assume it will drop around the same time in June, but who knows? Who knows? So yeah, we'll see what happens there. But I'm looking forward to it.
Definitely so. It's looking in a very, very good place, and it's a very good calendar that we have to be excited about. So mark your calendars for the 10th of February, and maybe even keep your eyes out on the Almost Pro Championship socials, because we might not be done for this season. Of course, we may well have. We did a pre-season show. We might have a post-season show in the works. We'll see what happens with that one, but that is going to round off our race and our evening, our season. So thank you very much to everybody who's joined along throughout the course of the season and throughout the course of this evening as well. And if you're still sticking around, thank you very much to yourselves as well. But until next time, underway. Dance's authority once again.
My word, this could go wrong. On the brakes, goodness me, what a launch!
Look at that.
It just all comes down to this